everyone, welcome back to Immediate Movie Reactions, though this time I again am not reacting to a movie, so maybe I need to change the name. The problem is there's just shit all for movies out right now that are worth seeing. I just have zero interest in anything that's out there, and I'm engaging in a lot of other content, so here I am. This one I'm doing today is Slayers. It is a Buffyverse podcast audiobook story. And it's interesting trying to do these reactions to more of a long form content because I think in the case of something like Third Eye, which I was my last video, I knew right away that it was not for me, that it was not something that I enjoyed and I didn't think was very good. But you need to get far enough into it that you really know what it's going to be about and how you're going to feel about it. So you don't have that initial knee-jerk reaction. You can actually have some time to think about it and give the story the appropriate amount of time to develop. So, I get about an hour, hour and a half a day to listen to this on my commute. So I've gotten 5 or 6 chapters into it. And I definitely have some thoughts on it. So, what is Slayers? Slayers is the new story set in the Buffy universe. So, it is sort of a multiversal story, which I'll get to in a little bit. And it's sort of an alternate reality. Basically, in this story, Buffy Summers has died, and with her death, there was a spell that was cast, and all of the Slayers who could possibly ever have been Slayers get their powers. And it's sort of set up with the idea that there's a young lady who gets her powers, and then this was going to be her coming of age in this sort of time of darkness as it's maybe not time of darkness, time of chaos, I guess, right? Where there's so many Slayers that the evil ones, the evil creatures, are being finally hunted down and sent back to the dark and all that sort of thing. And the story centers a lot on Indira, who's the Slayer who gets her powers, 16-year-old, gets her powers over breakfast. But on top of that, it's about Spike. And it's about Cordy, and it's about Drusilla and Anya, and most, I would not say all, but most of the characters that we have grown to love and care for and follow over the years. And it brings back most of the original cast. Sarah Michelle Gellar was not going to do it. She has said she's done with the Buffy universe, which is fine because I think the ones that do come back are fantastic, and I like that they brought the original actors back. Because if this had been anyone else, like I could not have listened to someone else doing Spike. I could not have listened to someone else doing Cordy, right? It just would not have worked. And it really does bring them back. It's not like they're just mentioned. So this is set, obviously, years and years after the Buffy stories that we know. There'll be a few things that I'm going to get to that I don't really like about it. So basically what happens is this Slayer now needs someone to train her, as the Watchers are either MIA or they're busy with all the other Slayers, and so she goes to Spike, and Spike is going to be the one to train her, and that's fine. It actually kind of makes sense in the context of the story. And like I said, James Marsters is back. He's Spike. He's absolutely fantastic. Charisma Carpenter is back. She's doing Cordy, and I'll get to how that all kind of happens. That's where the multiverse sort of thing comes in. Drusilla is back. Juliet Landau is stunning again as Drusilla. Anya and I'm going to give everybody, Tara is back. There's a bunch of them that are definitely back for this, and it adds to the overall story. Which is basically that Cordy has come from her universe where Drusilla is now the big bad. I'm sorry, some spoilers here. Drusilla is now the big bad. So she comes to this other universe to enlist the Spike of help, or the help of Spike, because in her universe, Spike has died. And the only one who can potentially stop Drusilla or talk some sense into her or whatever it is Spike. I haven't gotten far enough to know exactly why that is, because Cordy kicks ass in this. Anya is great. There's a lot of sort of inconsistencies, and that's where I get into some of my negatives with this. Um, there are inconsistencies in the story and the overall idea of what characters have done or can do. I think the voice acting is overall pretty superb. The characters, the actors that are back, even if it's not their IP, they own these characters. They own their voice, they own their story, they own their soul, and that's something that I was lucky enough. My wife and I at a recent Comic Con were able to meet Charisma Carpenter, and that's one of the things she had talked about when we had a chance to speak one on one with her. Is that this is the coming of the heroism for Cordy. This is her coming full circle. And it really is. It's like, Juliet Landau is Drusilla, no matter what else might be said. And they know these characters, that they know the inflections, they know the beats that they need to hit, and that's all fantastic. But some of the others, maybe not necessarily even the main, but some of the background actors, some of the demon voices and all that are a bit cartoony. I think that falls a little flat for me. As far as the whole multiverse, I don't know. I guess I'm just sick of the multiverse, and I know I'm not alone in that. It feels like kind of a cop out. Like, how are we going to get this to work? How is this going to make sense? Oh, great. We'll just have it be from another universe. Which it felt like, for a while, maybe we're doing like, in the 80s, it would have been time travel, and, maybe it was cloning in the 90s, and now it's multiverse. So that definitely, it falls a little bit outside of my general interest right now. But I think it comes together in such a way that it does make sense. I also don't like that in between each chapter, Spike sort of recaps, previously seen on, which it's not necessary. If you're listening to this as a narrative, it's not like they released one episode at a time. The whole thing was released. So you're listening chapter 3 to 4 to 5 to 6. You don't need that necessarily recap where they go back and say, this is what you just heard. This is what happened, in case you didn't pick it up. That feels a little bit unnecessary to me. But overall, I think that the story is gripping. It's definitely much more adult and much more mature than we would have seen. Even though it does have that same sort of tongue-in-cheek humor, it feels authentic to the Buffyverse. One of my complaints here is that, at least for me, like I said, I'm only in chapter 5 or 6. There's been one mention of Angel. So Buffy is a show that I'm kind of rewatching now, but I'm not necessarily loving it. Angel is a show that I love. I've watched it several times. I'm even such a geek that after the show ended on that quote-unquote cliffhanger, I went and I got the comic book, because there was a season 8 or whatever, 7 or 8, that was done in comic book form that was supposed to continue the story. And even though I am a sucker for the what happens 6 months, 10 years later, sometimes we don't want to know that. And I think with the Angel continuation of that story in comic book form, it ruined the ending of that show for me. It ruined some of the characters. And so there's definitely a danger in this series that that's going to happen. Recently, we were lucky enough to go see a screening of Napoleon Dynamite hosted by John Heder and John Grise and Efren Ramirez. And someone asked John Heder, where do you see Napoleon Deb these days? And he said, actually, I don't think it worked out for them. I think that they had a kid and life just got in the way and they didn't work out. And now he's paying child support and has to, kind of rebuild his life. Like, that's fucking depressing, right? But that's the thing, is like, the stories and the fairy tale ending that we want for a lot of these characters doesn't always happen. And as we see this, it's 20 plus years later, we see that same thing happening with some of these characters. So if you just, have a clear idea of what happened, and you don't want that changed, then maybe stay away from this. But if you're willing to see characters in different lights, in different dimensions, if you want to see some different things happening to them, then I think that this is definitely worthwhile. Um, One of my other complaints I would say is I'm a big Ms. Marvel Kamala Khan fan, and I love the whole idea of just she's just such a fan. Even if you watch on Disney Plus, there's a making of the Ms. Marvel television show, and the actress whose name is right now escaping me, and I am so sorry for that. Um, she was just a huge fan. She just wanted it so bad. And that's kind of the Slayer in this. Indira, that's her story as well. Like she's just a huge fan and just wanted to be a Slayer. And she's peppy and she's all like, "Hey, we're a team." And Spike's like, "No, we're not. I'm not doing the voice." Spike's like, "Hey, we're not a team. No." And that's Kamala Khan's story. It doesn't need to be Indira's story. They could have done something a little more original with that. But like I said, as I think this goes on, I think it'll be great. My favorite, obviously, is Charisma Carpenter. And, after having some time to meet her, it's just fantastic to see her taking control, her taking charge of that, being able to come back. It still makes me angry to think about what happened with Cordy and Charisma Carpenter and the end of Angel and the shit way that they handled that whole thing. I like to see her willing to come back, and I like to see that she comes back as a hero. She kicks ass in a way, I think especially towards later seasons, Buffy definitely showed why she was a badass. But in this, right from the get-go, Cordy is not the Cordy that we know, even though you still hear it, right? You still know there's still that feeling. Absolutely fantastic. I love it. This is one that I highly recommend if you are a fan of Buffy or if you're a fan of Angel. Like I said, I don't think it necessarily ruins any of the characters or any of the stories, unless you're so set in, I think this should have happened, or I wanted A or B or C or whatever to have happened, and that doesn't occur in this, then perhaps it's not going to work out for you. The audio production, the sound design is fantastic, especially if you're listening in earbuds. When there's a primary character and there's someone yelling at them in the background, and just that small bit of hearing their voice slightly muffled or far away. The sound of baseball bats hitting heads, I'm imagining it's a correct sound. The fights, all of that. It's really good the way they're integrating the soundscape into it. I think it's just fantastic. I'm really, really enjoying this to the point that I think after I finish it, it'll be one that I'll listen to through again. And I hope that there's going to be more. I'm really engaged with the story. So I have gone extremely long, way longer than I had intended. But this is one that I do highly recommend. I know that it's tough. Not everybody can do audiobooks or podcasts. But this is also, I wanted to say, there's a podcast called Marvel's Wastelanders, which kind of tells the story of the heroes, 20, 30, 40 years after the MCU or the current timeline of the comics. If you've listened to that, this is very similar. It's older, sometimes more grizzled, sometimes, more jaded, but still the same heart, the same feeling, the same characters. And yeah, I'm really enjoying this one. It is highly recommended. So please check it out. It is available on Audible, and I don't get anything for that, right? So, feel free. If you have an Audible credit or whatever, I don't know what the actual selling price of it is. Maybe I should have looked that up. But it's definitely worth it. Please check it out. And if you have, let me know what you think. If you haven't, then please, when you come back and let me know. I appreciate you all. Thank you very much.